Alrighty, happy Tuesday. Figured it'd be good to go over some commands and really how to navigate in some of the systems, more so on the maintenance administrative side that are really being used, implemented in the AI space. So no super technical things, just more, or at least not any big shifts in like, oh, AI that can read your mind. This is intended as something to help with just the navigating around our systems that we're using to build these AI frameworks. So this here, what you're seeing, is my development environment, integrated development environment, IDE, setup, whatever you want to call it. I suppose I'm a millennial, so I remember back in the days when we had stuff on like floppy disk, but this is low memory usage, and I don't have to go around with all the different plugins and extensions and things on something like Visual Studio Code or VS Code, but instead I also have access to all those things that are just more direct, of things like language servers to be able to connect for the different, whatever language you're using, things to be able to get the formatting, being able to lint or just make sure all the, well, it makes it all more straightforward. And so you're being helped without necessarily a say, GitHub Copilot, but you don't need to have all the same. I'm just showcasing what I find to be helpful. And ultimately, it's whatever makes you most productive. It's not about, oh, this is the best widget or this is the best thing. It's what makes you most productive, where you're not having to run through it. And for me, the fact that I can, this is low complexity in terms of like times I have to move my hand around, and I can just do everything basically from the keyboard. That works best for me. So to that point, let's go here, and so we'll go ahead and open here. It's going to be similar to what we see with the terminal. We call the command line interface. So there's some basic commands that are just good bread and butter. And again, this is, I'm running Linux, the operating system, on my Windows machine using what's called Ubuntu. The version number is 23.10, and the great thing about Linux is that really the open source community is maintained by the great work of a lot of developers, some who are never really compensated, but just because they feel strongly that, hey, I want to make something and share it with the world, because I wish I would have had this. And that's really what a lot of open source kind of comes to. And apologies if the sound is a little the old hearing aids, you never know what they're going to end up picking up. So that's sort of why I think there may be some audio dysfunctions. So nice thing about Linux too is that when you're in the command line like this, you can just update it. So we're going to do sudo, which is super user do, and that means you're having full admin privileges in your computer. apt is like our package manager, so that's the tool that we use to manage all the different things we're installing. So instead of full-on applications that we have to fill up our screen and everything, we just use that, and it knows to point and then pull it down. Update. Boop. Enter. And then we type in our sudo password. And then we have these different repositories that end up coming in. And oh, look at that. We got two packages that get updated. So we go sudo apt upgrade. Yes. Y. I don't know why I always press Y. It's usually typically default that it's just Y. Then one of the most helpful commands I've seen is clear. So you type that, enter, boop. If there's anything that's on your screen, it'll just go ahead and do that. Another way to do this is sudo apt updates and sudo apt upgrade Y, boop. And then bada bing, bada boom. There we go. And then and again, clear. So the nice thing too is that when we want to go around to the different folders, we call them directories. So we can do, like for me, you see on the left-hand side, over here, all these different folders. I'm in a folder, those are all the folders that are making up inside of this parent directory, the forge here. So let's say I wanted to go to one that's lower than that. I can do, for this example, rustlings. And now I'm in that folder. And if I press ls, enter, I can see everything that's in that folder. And when I want to go back, do cd dot dot, enter, right? So again, so cd rustlings, go in there, cd space, one space, period, period, enter. And then let's say that I want to go ahead and, oh heck, I don't know. Let's say I want to remove something. So let's see, was there something I wanted to remove here? Yeah, sure. So let's go ahead and remove that easy proxy. So it's going to be, you don't always have to do sudo. Let's see, sudo rm r easy proxy. Boop. This enter, enter, enter. And then we can check. No, let's think about it for a second. Oh, and another good command is control or command, depending on what you're using, C, to go ahead and clear or to stop something that gets stuck. So let's see. So I might have to do sudo rm-r easy proxy. Boop. Oh, man. And what you see there is that sometimes because of the way my configuration is set up, it keeps it from automatically typing something. So I have to press the I, or it's called the insert key, or I, to then let it know, hey, I want to actually interact with my script here. So it's going to be, oh yeah, it's ls, so right, and then just like that. So that easy proxy, no longer there, that folder is gonzo. If we want to make a folder, we can do sudo touch, and then test.py. And then we can actually even see right here, the .py means Python. So any Python application is going to have a .py at the end of it. You can see this little sort of snake image here. Again, so sudo rmr test.py, boop, and that's gone. All right, and clear. So again, so updating. You don't have to do this often, but typically, just because of all the different things I'm adding and taking away, I check on it pretty regularly. But it's more so about depending on what you're doing. And this will look similar with, say, like Apple-based systems, because they come from the same family in terms of like operating systems with a framework similar to Linux. And then there's, what's another good one with that? So, oh, and if you wanted to, say, move something, like move a file, so let's go again. Boop. So let's say we're going to move this file, Bungala, 5. We're going to move it to this other directory, or this other folder, Tortuga, just like that. And the nice thing is with this, you can see in real time that's going to move, and then, nope, not that. Okay, so then, yep, and it's able to go there, boop. And I suppose maybe the last thing here would be something more specific. So I had one of my, someone recently asked in terms of, or I think everybody's asking, it's like, what's the best programming language to learn? And it's really just depending on what your use is. And with that, there's this one programming language called Rust that is being seen as being very memory safe. And considering the recent cyber attacks that have been happening and all the bad actors, safety is a good thing to really be considering. And so with this, there's this nice little program, and this is available on I think GitHub, called Rustlings, and you can just go through and it will give you this interactive service that you can basically do little exercises for those who like to learn by doing. But yeah, it's really more so about what is your use, or what's the thing you're going to do. If you're going to use like Rust by itself, it is not conducive to the same kind of training that an AI model would end doing. Those are Python. That's Python, and specifically using what's called PyTorch. Mostly. There's also TensorFlow, and now things like Groq and Carrot, and there's just, I mean, Mojo. It's sort of, everyone's like Onyx, right? You hear all these different terms. You're like, where do I even start? And it's like, well, one suggestion to ponder with that would be, what do you want to do with it? You're like, I want to make a chatbot. Okay, well then, Python is really the brain behind that, and all large language models, or all AI, generative AI as it currently exists. But that's also just one piece, because one of the biggest issues with AI, and particularly with a program language like Python, is that typically by itself, it can't live out in the world. It has to be in some sort of container, like a virtual environment, and that does not have this like pretty interface with things. And so that's where people get this concept of the stack, or a tech stack rather, of like, okay, what is your front end, or the thing you're interacting with, your user interface, and then what's the back end, what's the actual like configuration there, what's your database, what's your blah, 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 blah. And so it's really encouraged us to work backwards from that. And there's this great software, or this package, or this platform called Streamlit. There's also one called Chainlit that are good for taking Python, and you just you make a Python application, and then you run Streamlit with it, and it puts that front end so you can see how your application actually works, and it looks decent enough, and you can be able to reference that and be able to show people, hey, look, here's my code in a way that isn't super codey looking, like, Exhibit A over here, or Exhibit B here, right? And so this is more so about being able to showcase the different things as they end up existing. And so it's really nice, and also with this, I think what a great potential avenue would be is making these AI microservices that can really leverage the inference from platforms like Groq with a Q, not to be confused with Elon's Groq with a K, because the fact that it's that speed meeting the safety, meeting the reproducibility. So it's something that I'm really interested in delving out and seeing what the potentials there are going to be, because lower latency means less energy use. Microservices means less energy use, and that's generally good not just for your electric bill, but it's good for the planet. So both, 2-for-1 special there. So hopefully this was helpful in terms of just some of the basic navigations. And again, it's not about having to, this is how I need to do this and that. It's more so trying to break apart some of the things and show, rather than just tell, okay, this is how this process looks, and help folks be a little bit more on the alert, not anxious side. So last little bit here. So again, so if you want to update, and 90% of people aren't going to need to go into this space, but this is more so for those who are like, okay, how do I even start? What's the sort of thing that I look for? It's like, well, your first stop can be, how are you going, if you want to learn to code, and which, right, that's the choice that everyone can make, and anybody can do. It's, how are you going to manipulate how are you going to write it? And it's not going to be a Word file, although some people have used Notepad before. Because all code, as we see it, is just words and numbers. And you ask people like, but then it goes into like all this other, that's like, okay, words and numbers. So how are you going to write it? And that's your development environment. And then what are you going to do with it? And so that's going to say, okay, do I need a front end? Do I need a back end? Do I just not care? I just want to play with this thing, or have it? So whatever you want to do, it just is going to be helpful to shape what that's going to look like, to just ultimately make whatever the best decision for each and every person is. So that's an individual decision on how you go forward with that. Oh goodness, there I go, being all long-winded again. Hopefully this is helpful, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.